Philip Zimbardo. Now, that's a name in psychology that you've probably heard, right? He's the researcher whose work became absolutely legendary for holding up this giant, uncomfortable mirror to all of us and revealing a really dark truth about human nature. He's the guy who forced us to ask, what really separates a good person from someone who does evil things? But here's the thing. What if the whole story was built on shaky ground? Because recent discoveries, and I'm talking unearthed recordings and interviews, have cast this massive shadow over his most famous work, the Stanford prison experiment. So now, we're not just questioning human nature, we're questioning the very foundation of one of psychology's most influential lessons.
And this is the idea that made him famous. This single sentence pretty much sums up the terrifying takeaway from his work, that the line we think exists between good and evil, it's not a wall, it's permeable. And that any of us, you or me, under the right or maybe the wrong circumstances, could easily step across it. This was the story we all learned. But was it the whole story?
To really get what all the controversy is about, we have to go back and revisit the experiment itself, the way it's been told for the last 50 years. So picture this. It's August 1971, and deep in the basement of Stanford University's psychology building, something pretty chilling is about to begin. The genius of the setup, or maybe the danger of it, was just how simple it was. Zimbardo and his team found a bunch of ordinary, healthy college kids, and then, with just a flip of a coin, they gave them a new identity. You're a prisoner, or you're a guard. That randomness, that was everything. It was meant to prove that it wasn't the kind of person you were, but the role you were playing, that would drive your behavior. So the plan was for this to run for 2 full weeks. It barely lasted 6 days. Things just went downhill so fast, so alarmingly, that Zimbardo's own girlfriend at the time, a fellow psychologist named Christina Maslach, had to step in. She confronted him about the morality of what was happening and basically begged him to shut it down. The guards had become cruel, and the prisoners, well, they were falling apart. And the conclusion they drew was as simple as it was terrifying. It wasn't about bad apples. These were all normal kids, remember? No, Zimbardo argued, it was the bad barrel, the toxic situation of the prison itself that corrupted them. And this idea that the situation can just completely overpower who you are as a person, it became gospel, not just in psychology, but in our whole culture. For decades, that was the story. End of discussion. It was in all the textbooks, lawyers cited it in courtrooms. It became our go-to explanation for how horrible things can happen. But then, researchers started digging into the archives. And the official story? It started to unravel, raising some huge questions that really shake things up. All of a sudden, these questions started popping up. Like, was that cruelty we saw really spontaneous? Or were the guards actually told to act that way? That prisoner who had a dramatic breakdown, was that even real? And what about Zimbardo himself? He wasn't just an observer. He was the prison superintendent. Did he basically stack the deck to get the results he was looking for? Okay, so the official version is that the guards just naturally became these sadistic monsters. But recordings that have surfaced tell a different story. On tape, you can hear one of Zimbardo's researchers telling a guard who was being too nice that he needed to be more tough and get in the action because the whole experiment depended on it. I mean, that's not spontaneous behavior. That's just giving people directions. And then came this bombshell. Prisoner 8612, a guy named Doug Corpy. His screaming, panicked breakdown was used for decades as the ultimate proof of how psychologically damaging the prison was. But years later, he came out and said he faked the whole thing. He just wanted to get out early to study for an exam. I mean, that one claim just pulls the rug out from under one of the most iconic pieces of evidence from the entire study. And what about the most infamous guard? The one they called John Wayne because he was so cruel. Well, he later admitted he was basically just acting. He saw the whole thing as improv theater and modeled his entire persona on a character from a Paul Newman movie, Cool Hands Luke. So, was he really succumbing to the power of the situation, or was he just a very, very committed method actor? Now, as you can imagine, with all these accusations flying around calling his life's work a fraud, Zimbardo didn't just stay quiet. He has always mounted a fierce defense of the experiment and what he believes are its fundamental truths. So Zimbardo argues that, look, telling a guard to be firm, that's nothing compared to the pressures in a real prison. He also points out that a third of the guards were good guards. They were tough but fair, and they didn't abuse the prisoners. That shows that people didn't just blindly follow orders. As for Corby's breakdown, Zimbardo says the guy's story is changed over the years, and at the time they had to treat it as real for ethical reasons. His bottom line is that the experiment still works as a powerful cautionary tale about the power of situations. Okay, so the experiment that made Zimbardo a household name is, to say the least, controversial. So what does that mean for his legacy? To figure that out, we have to look beyond those 6 days in 1971, because the prison study, believe it or not, was just one piece of a really long and complex career. I mean, his career went on for more than 50 years, and it was about so much more than just the one experiment. He started a groundbreaking clinic to treat shyness. He was elected president of the American Psychological Association. That's basically the highest honor you can get in his field. And late in his life, he shifted his focus away from the darkness he was so famous for studying to something much more hopeful. And what's so fascinating is how he connected his other work back to the themes of the prison experiment. He saw shyness as a kind of self-imposed psychological prison. It's a great metaphor, right? The shy person is their own restrictive guard, enforcing all these rules that limit their own freedom. And they're also their own timid prisoner, trapped inside. His clinic helped thousands of people find a way to break free. And this brings us to the final chapter of his career. And honestly, it might be the most inspiring one. After spending all these decades studying how situations can turn good people bad, Zimbardo decided to flip the whole question on its head and use his massive platform to explore our potential for good. He became absolutely fascinated with the psychology of heroism. His thinking was, if a bad barrel can spoil good apples, could we engineer a good barrel to help ordinary people do heroic things? He wanted to know what makes one person step up and help when everyone else just stands by and watches. And here's the crucial part. He didn't just study it. He did something about it. He founded the Heroic Imagination Project. It's an organization that actually trains people, especially young people, on how to be heroes. It teaches you how to resist peer pressure, how to speak up, and how to act when you see something wrong. It's pretty much the practical antidote to the dark lessons of the Stanford prison experiment. And so this is the question Zimbardo really leaves us with. His legacy it's complicated. The Stanford prison experiment might be deeply flawed, for sure, but the questions it made us ask are as important today as they ever were. He spent the first part of his career showing us how fragile our own morality can be, and he spent the second half trying to teach us how to build it back, even stronger. And that final question, can we design situations not to corrupt us, but to inspire us? Well, that's a challenge he's left for all of us.